What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Let's Talk About the Dead, and in this video I talk to Jason Douglas, who played Tobin. So sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Excellent. Good to see you, Tyler. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. I appreciate your patience in getting this set up. And of course, I had a last minute um, COVID test I had to go take this
Oh
morning because
yeah,
I'm working on an episodic, and they call you in to get a test when you are going to be going to work
yeah.
soon. So I had to go knock that out. I'm negative, so
Good.
it's good. So
I've seen you
uh,
got your Pfizer vaccine, which is great.
yeah,
Was
yeah,
it?
it is. I'm excited to. I'm excited to get the next round. I'm scheduled for, obviously a couple of weeks to go back,
Yeah.
and I'm excited to have all that behind us. We can go back to some kind of normalcy, whatever that means.
True.
It means
Yeah.
different things for different people, but. We've been very careful, I think as much as possible. I don't think in my uh, area, my state, we've been a bit looser about things, just generally politically,
Yeah.
the environment here, and the sort of tolerance for tight lockdowns. But our numbers have tracked very
Yeah.
similarly
Getting better.
to the rest of the country, including the ones that had really stringent lockdowns.
Yeah.
So I don't know, which is better or worse. In the long run, I think only history will be able to really tell us that, and we kind of get this in the rearview mirror. Uh, I see you've enjoyed Carol's cookies. I see.
Yeah.
I don't know who
Um,
Carol's making her cookies for these days, but it ain't Tobin.
no, not anymore.
No, no.
Did your arm hurt after doing it? I had the same one as you, and it was killing for like a day
Yeah,
and a half.
did which one did you get, Tyler?
I got the Pfizer.
Yeah, I felt nothing on the day of. In fact, I thought, wow, that is the tiniest needle I think I've ever seen for a jab. And and the next day, about 24, maybe 36 hours later, I started to feel a little soreness,
Yeah,
and overnight I had a bit of a headache. And I don't know if any of that, other than the arm soreness, I don't know that I had anything that I can point to that felt
that's good.
specifically attributable. Now, my wife had a different experience. She felt like she was coming down off of acid for 3 days. That, in her words, that's kind of how she put it. She
Right.
had a really weird, just kind of a spaced out feeling for a few days. And she's fine now, but
Yeah, that's good.
it affects different people differently, I guess, because it provokes a response within you. It's not really the vaccine that's doing it to you. It's
Yeah,
your body. It's how your body is reacting to the vaccine that kind of dictates how you're going to feel about it. So,
yeah, I'm excited to get. I get my next one in what day today? 17th. Yeah, in 10 days.
good for you.
What
Sure.
inspired you to become an actor and voice actor?
Yeah. So, in that's a. It's always an interesting question because when I think back on my sort of fateful decision to become an actor, um, it was all about choices and trade-offs and interests at the time.
Yeah,
And I think it's just fair to say that I arrived into my sort of high school years. So for me, we're talking 15, 16 years old, without a clear understanding of what I wanted to do in my life. I didn't I I mean, it sounds very dull to say that I lacked aspiration, but I just didn't have a clear view of what my life from that point, 5 years, 10
yeah,
years down the road, should look like. And so, in the sort of vacuum of ideas, I stumbled across my school's theater department, and sort of tumbled in, if you will, and I sort of I sort of fell for it. If you
Yeah.
know, I sort of just the 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 study of the English language, and just putting words on a page and bringing them to life, and just the kind of the general the atmosphere and the camaraderie amongst the cast, and the all of it. I fell in love with all of it. Theater specifically.
Yeah.
I'd grown up, of course, watching and loving movies and enjoying the cinematic experience. I didn't really have a special place in my heart for animation, or anime. I had no clue what that was at the time. But for me, it was theater first, with kind of a very distant idea of
Yeah.
maybe acting for film and television. So when it came time to choose college, I chose a school in Houston, Texas, which had been known for its sort of past glories, if you will, as an output of acting talent, and having great program, and I went there for that reason, and so that's kind of how I got started. And as my career evolved, I I I stayed in the theater mix for a good while before I sort of started pursuing other kinds of acting work, when I realized, there are people out there in the world who will pay me to do this. This is astonishing. And I would, we would get like a stipend or something for doing a stage play somewhere, but it was a
Yeah.
pittance. You couldn't live on it, and you still had to have, I was moving furniture, and waitering. I was serving. I was doing these kinds of jobs, catering, and while I was doing theater, and I thought, well, this is all right as long as it's just me, right? But once you start adding a partner, and children, that then it becomes a different calculus, so to speak, and you have to look for better ways to support yourself and them.
Yeah.
And so it's, I would say it was initially driven by curiosity, and then there was a good few years of sort of passion fueled pursuit of the craft, and then at a certain point it shifted to sort of sustenance and survival, and kind of the workaday sort of things that we do to stay relevant and to stay on top of our craft, and I think I became a better actor in that. After when it's one thing to pursue something that you think you're passionate about because
Yeah.
it's fun, and you admire the people who do it, and it's quite another thing when you have to survive it, when you have to sort of take that passion and say, you know what, brother, you're stuck. You chose something when you were young and foolish, that typically cannot sustain most people, right? It's not something that necessarily is going to feed you in the long run. And
Yeah.
I don't mean feed like, spiritually or passionate. I mean literally put food in the mouth of those that you are in your care. But I think I became a better actor because I think when you insert hunger and for some people that's a distraction, but I actually think that it grounds you when you realize, I can't be silly about this. I have to pursue this with the right attitude and with the right expectations, and I have to, we have to develop a thicker skin, because rejection. We endure a lot of rejection in this field, and so yeah, I think. Anyway, that's kind of how I got started. I mean, that's kind of how I got started. I mean, there's probably lots of stories about how I sort of moved from kind of one area to another. Probably the most interesting thing is just that I started doing anime at a certain point while I was still doing theater,
Oh, right. Yeah.
and so it was kind of a mishmash, if you will, of kind of doing lots of theater jobs, theater gigs, but also then going in to do recording for what was then a very sort of young and unknown anime purveyor in the United States known as ADV Films. And but again, it was gigs. You know,
Yeah.
how can I get paid as an actor and make a living? And that's how that started.
I love everyone's different stories because everyone comes from a different background, and because you're the first voice actor I've had I've spoke to, which is amazing because you've had over 200 um things to voice in, or
Right.
yeah, that's just
Yeah.
amazing.
I stopped counting at one point. Well, you know, my philosophy has always been, at least for me, and kind of the way I'm pursuing my vocation, is that I need to be able to do a lot of different things, right? I mean, I can't confine myself to one space, because if
Yeah,
I do that, and then for whatever reason, uh, the jobs dry up, which happens.
yeah,
This work can be seasonal. It's very finicky. The way, it's
yeah,
very difficult to sort of create a sustainable pipeline. And so the answer to that, or at least one solution to that problem, is to make sure you have multiple pipelines, right? So um, there is very little correlation, right, between income from, let's just say, on one extreme, theater work, and on the other side, commercial voiceover, right?
yeah,
So voiceover, I have a client. Here's a for instance. I have a client who does is basically like a little ad firm for LASIK centers all over the United States,
yeah,
and so they work with me, and that is a revenue stream for me, and it's a completely unrelated revenue stream
yeah,
to other kinds of work that I'm doing, whether it's
yeah,
film and television or anime, whatever kind of voiceover job. Um, and so by assembling these different pieces and having different kind of you know uh, pipelines in, I can sort of make it. We can make it year to year. We can have some income, and when one stream dries up, well, we hope and pray that it comes back, but we have these other,
yeah.
pieces that put together. So I'm a big fan of. There were years ago, I would hear about investors sort of diversify your risk, right? Diversify, have a diverse portfolio where
Yeah.
you invest your money, so that if something catastrophic happens in one sector, it doesn't reflect it doesn't impact the entire portfolio. And I said, well, why not diversify your revenue streams as well? So it's a similar concept, but it's sort of,
Yeah.
I'm more and I'm less of an investor than I am of kind of a someone who's making money by actually hustling and doing different jobs. So
It's good, but now obviously there was when COVID hit, there was no acting. But did you have much voiceover work, or was that kind of stand?
even the voiceover work dried up a little. Even my LASIK clients, who have always been so dependable, kind of went away for a while. Um, I was fortunate that there were a couple of things that happened. Um, I had I had some accounts receivable
Yeah,
from voiceover that, you know, still hadn't paid yet. So particularly for the first few months when the actual work was drying up, I was still getting something in.
yeah, that's good.
And then around the middle of the year, I got the call to record Krieg, my character from Borderlands,
Yeah,
and so that was a very nice, not entirely unexpected, but it was a very nice kind of job that happened. And in fact, I recorded that character from home. I mean, it was one of the we would never have done that. They would never have opted to do that in a sort of non-COVID year, but they wanted to produce that content, and the fans were hungry for it.
yeah,
And because a lot of us voice actors have kind of pivoted, and I've been recording from home for years,
yeah,
but most of the studio work the animation, the anime stuff, and video games is has always been done at a studio somewhere. But last year sort of dictated a change in approach, and so many of us were able to sort of jump on that and take advantage of those changes right off the bat. And so Krieg was recorded in a closet in my home, and then the other thing with the anime, which I continued to do mostly through Funimation, is they also pivoted to home-based recording, and so anything that's come out with me over the last year via Funimation has been something that we've recorded remotely.
That's good. I'm glad you've had work.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I should probably add as well, since you were asking, I did have some couple opportunities to shoot. So I actually,
that's good.
right after COVID landed, I went and shot a movie called Redstone. Shot here in Texas, but it starred, I guess, Michael Cudlitz from The Walking Dead, who you know well as Abraham, and so I was thrilled to get to go actually do some work, and it was kind of in the early stages of COVID when no one was sure how to approach shooting, and well, I think we were all kind of waiting to get shut down, like they're going to come and shut us down, but we made it, and they made the movie, and I think it's due to come out at some point.
Cool, that's good. I did not realize I've watched Breaking Bad. I don't know how many years ago now, but you're in Breaking Bad for a couple episodes, which is pretty cool.
Right. Yeah.
How was working on that?
Well, I mean, it was. I got a chance to work. I mean, I worked with all the principals. I mean, I got to work with. I wasn't a major character, but it was kind of a minor, kind of a cool recurring thing. If you're, if your viewers or listeners don't know, it was basically an Albuquerque police detective who's interrogating Jesse, the Jesse character, in the season finale of season 4. Primarily, that's where the character appeared, and then they brought us back at the midpoint of season 5. My detective partner and I, played by Gonzalo Menendez, so we ended up doing, I think, 2 or 3 episodes, because then we appeared in the next episode after that. So Vince Gilligan directed at least the one episode that I did. There's a season finale of season 4, which by all rights we thought was possibly the last episode of Breaking Bad. There was no guarantee that at that point that they were even coming back for a season 5. And frankly, if they'd stopped the show at that point, it really would have been a perfect ending. There was no reason to go into season 5. I'm glad they did. I liked season 5. Don't misunderstand me. But the show arc really reached its conclusion with the final episode of season 4. And so I felt honored to be a part of that. And then we got to go back, of course, for season 5. So it was amazing. Of course, I got to work with Bryan Cranston and Aaron. I'm going to blank on Aaron. Aaron Paul, sorry. And Bob Odenkirk. I got to work with Bob briefly. And it was a great experience for me as a fan.
Yeah,
because I love the show, but it was also it was just a great experience. It's always a great experience when you work with people that are good at what they do. Yep. It brings your level up, and what's cool is you kind of take that experience with you. You don't. It's not like it just happens and then it's over. I mean, I think if you're open to it and you're kind of reflective about it, you kind of get to take those experiences with you, and what you learned and the confidence that you gain from it, I think it impacts your future work. So I hope it does. Anyway,
gonna go to voice acting quickly. You've done like Borderlands, Dragon Ball Z, and Attack on Titans, which is just free of the many. But how different is voice acting compared to acting other than physical side? Because it's just
Yeah, it's interesting because we talk about this a lot, especially when I do. Every once in a while, I'm asked to do like an online voice acting workshop and
Yeah,
or something, and this is always something that comes up because you might have stage actors that are trying to become voice actors, people that have maybe done some television and film that want to be a voice actor, or voice actors are curious about going in the other direction, and it's always like, what do I need to do, what are the adjustments? And I'd say there's two sides of it. One is the sort of the artistic side, the organic acting side. These are the things that you go you know learn about in your theater 101 type class, right? Your acting 101. It's what are your characters' motivations? What are the sort of the beats, if you will, of the scene? What are you doing to get what you want? What's your, does your character have a secret? All these kind of little games you play to kind of like find your place
yeah,
in the script. Um, but then there's this other side of acting, which is technical. It's why, if you go to theater school, you take that acting class, but then you also take a movement class. You also take a voice class. And it's why at many acting programs now, they also have on camera classes. Because it's one thing to learn to be true and interesting as a character, but then you have to kind of you have to adjust your performance to whatever medium. If I'm working on stage, I mean, I've done Shakespeare outdoors for 5,000 people. Well, that's a very different technical performance
yeah,
than if I were recording um, um, one of the Bard's speeches for, let's say, a radio play, something, or even for television or film, right?
yeah,
So the medium really dictates, and I think, of course, uh, working, let's say, for anime or video games, you've got a microphone. Well, how's that different and how's that the same? Well, I also have microphones on me when I do a live action piece. So when I do Breaking Bad or Preacher or Walking Dead, we're all mic'd. We've got a little mic here on our lapel, usually, um, and usually a boom mic,
yeah,
right? Something hanging out over. So, and in that case, it's really all the name of the game is avoid the equipment, right? Don't be aware where the camera is, but don't be thinking about it too much, Um, uh, Whereas in a studio, there is a sense of, okay, well, what's the medium? What does it look like to the audience, right? So, in anime, they're watching something that's actually very cinematic a lot of times. So you have characters, you're on screen, you're seeing their faces, but a lot of times they're in a sort of hyper energetic delivery. So
yeah,
you got to kind of deliver it, but you also have to have a spatial awareness of the kind of space that the characters are in, and the fact that you've got a microphone here. You don't want to blow out the mic. Um, uh, Video games are a little different. Video games require a little more projection. It's a bit louder. It's a bit noisier. It's characters that are in an intense situation. There's a lot of sound effects, usually gunfire and explosions, and depending on the kind of artillery your character is using at the moment. So you have to. That's a very almost theatrical performance, right? And so yeah, I think that just comes with experience,
yeah.
and I would say there are differences. I used to hear, oh, it's all acting is acting. Well, not really. I
No, yeah,
mean, if you're
that makes sense.
there are fundamentals that are in place, but part of becoming a good actor, and I think just the experience that you get from doing, is learning the difference between
Yeah,
those things.
because it's crazy. Like when you watch, like when you just see like if there was a behind the scenes video of you in Walking Dead, it's quite calm. But when I was watching a video of like the voice actors watching Dragon Ball Z, and for me it's more like they get more animated and they're like as them. They're
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it
yeah.
have a lot more. I don't know what
It
it is.
helps the actor to sort of transcend the environment that they're physically in, because
Yeah,
most of the time when we're recording anime, we are in, well, I would say it's not an ideal environment to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, these studios use a lot of small kind of what we call a whisper booth in the
Yeah.
business. They're tiny little isolation booths that I don't think they're conducive to great audio. On conversely, I was just here in Dallas, and I'm working on an episodic for television right now, and I was doing ADR for the show.
Yeah.
And so it was my own character. It was work that I'd done on the day, but there were a couple of places where they need line pickups or they added something while I'm off camera. So this is very typical in episodic television work where you go in and film as well, particularly for television. And I went into a studio that does a lot of ADR work for film and television, not so much for anime, etc., but a lot of ADR work for film and television. They also do they do some music production and some, corporate and radio, that kind of thing. They're kind of an all-purpose studio. But in that case, I was in a room that was probably 12 foot by 15 foot with probably at least maybe 10-foot ceilings. And I was on mic in the middle of the room. The walls themselves were made of a highly sound absorbent. It was a sound absorbent type of material.
Yeah.
And so what you have is you have a cleaner sound without the boxiness of being inside a booth. So why did I say all that? Well, you're talking about. Yeah, I think a lot of times us actors we can feel confined by the spaces we're in when we do that kind of recording, and so I just think it's helpful. And but even in the larger space, sometimes it's helpful to help yourself get into the scene that you're looking at. I would like to think that at a certain point, I would love for somebody to experiment with recording. In like a VR set, using a VR, because I've already thought over the years that being in the booth, and a lot of times you're in the booth and the lights are dimmed or they're not even at all, and all you have is the screen that's in front of you, and we're trying to, but after you've been in the booth for a couple of hours with a show, you almost feel like you're on set,
Yeah.
In that world with those characters, and I've thought, well, it would be a step further to actually put you on mic and use a VR headset and actually be able to really be on set. Like you're really, one of the characters, and who cares about the mic? You can, if the room is done right, you can put the mics, at a good distance away from the actor, and you just, maybe have one lav mic. So anyway,
That'd be really cool.
No one's asking for my advice on these things, but I have lots of opinions.
We could, in years to come, they could. Who knows what technology would be like?
Right.
That'd be cool, though.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Kicking off with the Walking Dead questions. Were you a fan before you were cast?
Not really. Not really. I knew of the show, but I don't claim to have, that I was like a big fan of the comic book. I think I probably watched the first. I don't know if I'd watched the first episode. I probably had. I loved the first season. I just thought it was just the first season was so tight and concise and shocking, and it was just such a great. It became something different. Obviously, zombies are scary in a certain way, but after 100 episodes, they're just not scary in that way anymore. And but yeah, I had auditioned before I had auditioned for the show when it was initially coming around, and I think I'd read for Merle, and I'd read for a character Otis, who was the farmhand in the first or second season. And I think I'd read for another character, but that's how it goes. You read for characters and you're not quite right, or someone else is more right or better. They have a better read that day, and if what you're turning in is good enough and interesting enough, they'll keep bringing you back.
Yeah.
And of course, series are written as they're being shot. They don't necessarily know what the show is going to look like a year or two seasons or whatever from now, and so there's constantly writing. So what you hope is in a popular show like that, that something comes up that you're really right for, and that there's just this uh, this sort of happy meeting of preparation and circumstance, and you get called back in, and it happens. And so
Yeah.
I suppose that happened for me.
Yeah, which is good. Because and then in that case, how did you get cast for the role as Tobin?
Yeah, it was another audition after I hadn't auditioned for a good while. I
Yeah.
suppose you could say I'd kind of forgotten about it, and and then we had another audition come through, and it was for a character not named Tobin, and the scene was fairly pedestrian. I mean, it was a scene that was written for the audition, actually.
Yeah.
It wasn't from the show. But it was a construction supervisor, if you can imagine that, who was, I'm trying to think, he had an injury that happened on his job site, and he was sort of struggling for some reason with how to handle it, and he was kind of having this conversation with someone who was in the room with him, and it was not quite a parallel to Tobin's initial,
Yeah.
but it kind of caught the essence of the guy, and
Yeah.
and that's all they needed. That's what they wanted. And so then I found out I got cast, and and by the way, they've changed the name of the character for some reason. And of course it was Tobin all along, but it was just that they were keeping. At a certain point, they realized we can't keep sending sides out
Yeah.
for people to audition, because somebody's going to leak those sides, and it's going to give away plot points. And I'm sure you're probably aware that the show, I don't know if this is still the case, but the show has a pretty aggressive spoiler community that it like really kind of
Yeah.
wants, like they try to get as many details as early on. It's almost, I don't know why, it's a bit like it's become a sport. It became a sport for them.
Yeah.
I mean, most people like to view their things spoiler free. They don't want to know all those details. But I suppose it's possible to make a sport out of learning, as much as you can, and then watching it to see if you were right.
Yeah, it's
So,
crazy. I don't know how
yeah.
they get everything dead on. I don't know how they know. It's
Well, I give you some ideas how they know. There are days on the set when there are anywhere from 20 to 30 extras, plus all the people that play zombies. I mean,
true.
you know, that, like, there are a lot of people, and of course there are crew, but then there are other people they bring in as ancillary. In other words, what I'm trying to say, not to throw our background community under the bus. What I am trying to say is that we have it's not a small, concise, or
Yeah,
tight.
that makes sense.
It's a big group. It's a big group. It's hundreds and hundreds of people that make that show. And I do think there can be among them, among those folks, there can be some who kind of have a little fun with kind of allowing themselves to slip a little bit of information. And they might not even realize they're doing it. That's the thing, Tyler. They could just be like, I'm going to take a selfie because this is such a cool opportunity. And like the selfie includes other people and details and dates
Yeah.
and the sort of the amateur Walking Dead sleuthing community. They've got like a basement with like, it's like they're tracking a serial killer, and they've got like strings from everything, and they figure it out.
Yeah,
They figure it out. I walked out of my trailer one morning, and there was Andy Lincoln, and we were having a conversation, and I looked up, and this particular day we were at the the Alexandrian set, and I looked out across this, like, because you could see the street. There's like a coffee shop, and then there's like a railroad that goes past.
yeah.
This is in Sonoya, and but I looked, and like in a tree, about maybe 150 yards away, on the other side of the fence, because the set itself, this is base camp, but it's locked down. You
Yeah.
can't just come in and out. But like in a tree, was like someone with you know, a camera. They were like
Oh,
I could let's see like a long lens. They were shooting us, standing around having a smoke and a conversation.
really?
And I was just like, "What? You got up early? It was probably 6:30 in the morning too." I mean, I just was astonished at the energy that some of these folks have.
I can picture
But
that.
that's how they do it. I mean, spies,
Yeah,
spies. That's how they do it.
I could just pick. I've been to Sonoy or Sonoy, and I could just see someone, in a tree. Just
Yeah, yeah.
it's a
Doing what it
beautiful set.
takes. Getting a
It's
scoop.
what is it like inside? Because you was in there for ages. What is it like in
Inside.
Alexandria? Because I've seen it from the outside in person, but
Oh,
not
oh.
inside.
So it is a small community
Yeah,
of homes, and people live there. Believe it or not, some people don't realize. They think that's all just a set,
yeah, they
but
get
in
paid.
fact, it was intentionally. It was built as a small, probably gated community. We have a lot of those in the States,
Yeah,
and uh, it's a beautiful little community. These are like little, you've seen the homes, you've seen. I mean, it is, and many of those scenes, particularly if you think about inside the various homes when you're in Alexandria,
yeah,
certainly Deanna's, uh, house. Those are all practical inside those homes. So, a lot of times in Hollywood, your outsides and your insides are totally
yeah,
different. You have a set somewhere. They just shoot the exterior, and then you go shoot the interior somewhere else on a soundstage. That's fairly typical. But in the case of Alexandria, they used the insides of the homes. In some cases, they built mock-up homes that looked like they would fit in the neighborhood, but in fact, they were empty, completely empty. They were literal sets. So you'd see the front porch and the door, but you'd walk in and it would be just dirt and poles and set pieces. So they did augment
yeah,
the look of, by adding those elements and adding homes. And like Tobin's house, I think, was a complete mock-up. Well, of course it was, because then they blew it up, if you remember, at a
yeah,
certain point in season, whatever season it was. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
they blew it.
It was when you died. Yeah, yeah, season 8.
Right. Yeah, 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 yeah. But I was there when the tower fell. That was an amazing experience to see happen live. And the church. So the homes themselves are there. It's really interesting once you get inside the gates. It's all fairly secure.
Yeah,
You can walk around. A lot of times, when we would be waiting between scenes, we would just be sitting in one of the houses. We would have, one of the houses might be used that day for hair and makeup, possibly. So, yeah, yeah, yeah. It felt like home, for a while. Uh,
were
so
the walls made from the show, or they the actual walls from the real community?
yeah, those definitely. That is not an architectural style in the United States to have these sort of
Yeah,
giant rusty walls. Uh, in reality, um, if well, if The Walking Dead had never invested in that neighborhood and become what it was, that would have just been like a mix of like brick and
yeah,
iron, very kind of tasteful and appropriate, I suppose. But yeah, that was definitely, those walls were definitely erected for the show,
yeah,
and I imagine I I wouldn't be surprised if it's not permanent for that neighborhood.
yeah,
It's I can almost see that neighborhood becoming kind of a theme park for Walking Dead fans.
yeah,
It's
definitely.
possible because the town itself, as you know, was also figured heavily in the sort of the governor's arc.
Yeah,
So if you're a fan and you go to Sonoya, you're walking around downtown Woodbury, and then if you cross the railroad tracks, you're getting into Alexandria. It's a very unintentional
yeah,
thing, and I do know that the show, via AMC, as well as some of the producers of the show, have bought homes there and are, so these lovely folks who bought homes before the show moved in and
Yeah.
thought, oh yeah, sure, we'll give you access to our neighborhood for a couple of years and make some money. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up moving, like getting a
Yeah.
very handsome offer to just move on, build over, a few miles away. But we're going to turn this into the Walking Dead theme park. What's interesting is Sonoya. It's an old town in Georgia. It's been there for a while, and prior to the Walking Dead, it had also been known as a shooting location for a couple of other movies, including I think one called Fried Green Tomatoes. I don't know if Driving Miss Daisy was one of them, but it was actually known as a shooting location.
All right.
But those projects have been quite overshadowed by now. I mean, you've got the Walking Dead
Yeah.
sort of cafe or whatever. You've got,
Everything's down there now.
yeah, Norman owns a restaurant there. But my favorite spot was the coffee shop. Did you go to the coffee shop when you were
I
there? The one down by the railroad tracks?
didn't. No, we
No. Sonoya Coffee.
no,
Yeah, they
actually.
roast their own beans. They're very good. I mean, I highly recommend. You can probably order it online, but it was always, for me, it was always a quick stop. Like before,
Yeah.
like, hey, if I knew I had time, like I'm at base camp, but I know I don't have to be on set. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna pop over to the coffee shop. Hopefully nobody sees me.
Yeah.
You kind of put on your kind of run over there because you're not technically in the set. In base camp when you run over there, and potentially fans could stop you, but I was always
Have
quick
any,
to just get in and out.
did you have any bad fan react or weird fan encounters?
Not so much in person, although there was a while like when I would go to a convention, like a pop culture convention,
Yeah.
and people would either confuse me for a different character, or they wouldn't like me because I played Tobin and Tobin was trying to get with Carol, right? And you have these
Oh, they're
these
still about. They're
yeah shippers, and I'm like, I am so not about that. I don't have that way of interacting with shows, television,
yeah.
film. I don't ship characters. I just kind of accept
Yeah.
what I'm offered, right? Like, and either I react to that or I don't. But I don't like cross my fingers and hope that these two characters, they belong together. They need, like, it's not
Yeah. No,
real life.
I
Like, we
completely
need to,
understand.
we need to better understand why these characters are together or
Yeah.
why they're not. That will help you enjoy the show more because you will enjoy it on a different level. But what you do when you ship characters is you say, I don't accept this story. I like this story, but I don't accept it. It needs to be more like I want it to be. No, come on. I don't know.
I agree.
That
But I
anyway.
like Tobin and Carol together.
Yeah, I mean, it was appropriate. I mean, I think it told a certain part of the story. I think it definitely helped. I think it helped. It helped the Carol character develop, which
Definitely.
was the point. It was saying something about where she was in her life and what she needed and what she was willing to sacrifice. And it was not meant to be more important, I think, than that.
Yeah.
But it was simple and it was real and it was true, and I think it was, in a sense, it was saying, if not for the apocalypse, Carol might have ended up with a guy like Tobin. Like, I think they would have been a good fit for each other outside of the apocalypse.
Yeah.
He would be like a really decent guy after all that she'd been through with her previous husband, being in an abusive relationship and having lost, her daughter. And to find a guy that's like sensitive and giving and like, she deserved that, I think.
Yeah.
And in a sense, in real life, you would, if you had a friend like Carol, you would maybe hope to set her up with somebody. You wouldn't set her up with Daryl. You just wouldn't. And
Finally.
I'm gonna catch so much hell for saying that from a certain segment of our fans. But I think it's true. I mean, I think it's true. You just, you wouldn't set your you wouldn't set your friend up who had been through those experiences with a guy who's kind of the bad boy. Listen, I love Daryl. I mean, when Daryl the character was introduced on the show, he quickly became one of my favorites because I loved Norman Reedus's work as the character. I thought it was sensitive and like it was. I thought it was moving, especially in his. It was such great nonverbal acting.
Yeah,
And he's fine when he speaks. But my point was just that you could read so much. Um, so I'm a fan. Like I'm a big fan of Daryl. I just don't. I don't need for what I'm saying is I don't need for certain characters to get together, and it doesn't bother me when they do, and it doesn't bother me when they
yeah,
don't. It should just be true to the story and should not be something I think that's dictated by popular whim. And that's
yeah.
all I'm going to say about that.
I completely agree with that one. That I fully agree with the Carol Daryl relationship thing. It's crazy to see now, especially I don't know if you've seen on social media or watched the episode. Daryl hooks up with a new character called Leah.
Right. I've heard of it. Yeah, I haven't seen it. Yeah.
Let's scream about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just
No, I just don't know how you can I look, what I would say then, what I was saying back then was just, especially amongst friends was like, I don't care how somebody interacts with the show. If you're a fan of the show and you kind of enjoy rooting for different possible outcomes and you're still there when it happens or not, then fine. But it does it does reach into our lives in a little bit of in
yeah,
a way. I mean I was catching all kinds just me as an actor, like online. I was getting all kinds of like messages and like really awful memes that were forwarded uh, from fans who did not like the fact that Carol and Tobin were getting together. I think I had, and this is the other thing. There was a banner at a pop culture convention
yeah,
that I was in front of, and somebody thought it would be funny to if I would, we have these little markers, and so we write, we sign autographs and whatnot,
yeah,
and we sign our banners, and it's kind of a courtesy that we do for the show because then the show can do something with the banner. I don't know if
yeah,
they did or not, but somebody thought it'd be funny, and I agreed. I thought it would be funny too to make a little heart, like Carol plus Tobin or something, like you would scrawl onto a tree. And anyway, there were a bunch of photos of me in front of my banner with that, little
yeah.
that little silly, thing that I had done, which was really just there for kind of just for chuckles, right? It was there for the fans that were there in person to see that I had done that. It was nothing. But certain fans like saw that in the pictures and they got so pissed off, like that they thought that Jason Douglas, the actor, was sort of like clout chasing, right? By associating myself and my character with the great Carol, and I don't know how people have time to sit around and let their wheels turn in that way and come up with that stuff and
It,
then get online and like start banging on their keyboard, bah, 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 I'm going to send that. Man, I'm going to let him have it. Like,
yeah,
what lesson are you trying to teach me? How am I going to do things any different? I'm not, what is that going to, I don't know.
I've seen
Anyway.
um, Seth. I don't know what I haven't really read it, but Seth is going through that. He's going through hate towards him now, like same as Josh. It just
Yeah.
it's just I don't get how they can't break between character and actor. If you don't like the character, oh well, it's not.
I was at Madison Square Garden for the premiere of season 5, I guess. I think that's right. And when I want to say, yeah, it was when Seth was introduced.
Yeah,
He was a very recent addition to the show at that point, still new, and father, uh, whatever, his character
yeah,
was really, kind of morally questionable, but he's a good actor. Seth is a
yeah,
good actor, and and we should embrace our actors. We should embrace our good actors, whether they're playing good guys or bad guys. They're
Yeah.
not their characters. They're totally different. And Seth is a fine, fine actor. He's a great comedic actor, by the way. He's also a great dramatic actor. He's played Othello, at the Houston Shakespeare Festival that I know about. I mean, the guy has chops. He's good. He was introduced and he was booed, and he was booed by some of the, like a big segment of the fans who had come to MSG that night, and his mom was in the, like, it was a special night for him. He had invited his mom. He was quite devastated by that.
Not bad.
He was quite devastated by that, and I know you mentioned Josh, and I know Josh has had similar experiences when Eugene started to kind of turn, like it's. Fans have to understand that, and most do. Let's just be clear.
Yeah.
Most fans
1%.
totally get it, but it only takes a small segment of very vocal keyboard warriors and such to like really make to really kind of echo around and suddenly sound like it's just a chorus of boos, and that affects people, and there's no reason for it.
Yeah.
It's not even as if we're writing our characters. We're not. We are not. Seth has nothing to do with, what father. Why am I blanking on his character
Gabriel.
name? Yeah, it's Gabriel. Of course it is. But he has nothing to do with that. His job is to show up, get in costume, say the words, and that's it. That's his job, is to be the character in the moment. A writer came up with that plot, someone else comes up with these things.
Mhm.
Showrunners and writers' rooms have predetermined the outcome of what these characters are going to do and say, and who they're going to kiss, and who they're going to sleep with, and who they're going to kill. And our jobs as actors is to bring that experience to life.
Yeah.
And if you're watching something and you're horrified by it and it makes you angry, and then the actor probably did a pretty good job, because that's our job, is to move you. It's our job to do it believably, and not do it in a way that is, hammy and kind of, lacks veracity. I mean, our job is to shock you. Our job is to, in some cases, make you fall in love with us, but in other cases it's to make you, horrified and scared, and so that's just us doing our job. Don't crucify actors for doing their job.
Yeah, exactly. Because I don't know if you've seen it. If you've seen Bones, there was the Gravedigger character, which is, she's awful, and every time we see her, like, oh, she fucking dies, and then she does. But that's what an actor can do. If they can make you hate that character so much, then it's well done.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Xander Berkeley from the show, loved his work. Every time he was on screen, I was just glued to what he was doing. It was so nuanced and detailed, and it was just rich. There was so much going on, and he caught a lot of hell. Like, people hated that character. Like, what's your least favorite character? Well, it's Gregory, right? Was that his character's name?
Yeah.
I forget. But in fact, it was funny.
I thought it was funny.
I loved seeing him, but again, not a likable character. It's not like he's, for me, sometimes you like a character regardless of their sort of, moral position in the show, because it's deliciously acted by a really competent performer. And so I think we can have both. I like to think we can have both.
That makes
We
sense.
can have characters we hate, but that we love to hate.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the most iconic characters in American television is J.R. Ewing, the oil baron character on the television show Dallas. And he was famously known as the character that we most love to hate. He was ruthless. but he was sort of fun in his
Yeah.
ruthlessness. It was fun to watch. There's a reason shows get phenomenal ratings, and it's not because everyone is singing "Kumbaya."
No, I completely agree. What was your favorite episode to film out of your 25 episodes, which is amazing?
I always say it's the last one. It was, I mean, it's not always, that's not true of every show that I've done. I'm just
Yeah,
saying on The Walking Dead, that was my favorite episode because it was Tobin's best episode.
it was a very good episode.
Second only maybe like I could certainly make an argument for the season 6 kind of like the scene with obviously with Carol and Tobin and sitting on the porch
Yeah,
and the kiss, and the conversation. That was a really lovely scene, like something out of I don't know. I would be overstepping here, but it felt like a classic piece of American theater in certain ways. Just
yeah,
two sort of characters sitting on a porch who are at crossroads in their lives, and there was just some very nice dialogue, some of which didn't make it into the final scene, which was
yeah,
disappointing. But that was a lot of fun. But the final episode, that was straight out of classic horror. I mean, it was Frankenstein, to be honest with
yeah.
you.
It was.
Jeff
Uh,
January, who directed that episode, was definitely going for the Frankenstein vibe,
yeah,
and but it was a chance for me to do all the things with Tobin that I wanted. I always said I hoped Tobin, when he goes out, he dies with his boots on, and he did. He was right there in the battle. He was taking shots at the enemy. He was involved in that. So the first half of the show, I got to be Tobin, classic Tobin. He gets bit. I get to have closure with Carol. Some very nice scenes, and then the second half for me was, Walker,
yeah,
and getting to kind of go through that. So I really, in that one episode, I kind of got the full arc of what it means to be on The Walking Dead.
yeah,
The walkers and the survivors, and I got to have close scenes with most of the principal cast, and these are people that I had gotten to know
yes.
over
I don't
time.
think you.
Melissa McBride and Andy Lincoln and Norman was on set, and as well as some of the new guys like Avi Nash, who I loved on the show. Yeah, so it was just that episode and those episodes leading up to it were I felt like for me a really fun time on the show because there were
Yeah,
so many of us working and doing these really like action oriented things. It wasn't as oppressive as it felt, let's say during a lot of season 7, I guess, when
yeah,
it was all like uh, we were all just kind of under siege.
yeah.
So
That's what I liked about season 7 because it was so season 8. Sorry, it was like you and Eric and all the smaller characters that I enjoy watching
yeah,
going
yeah,
out, kicking ass, and I mean both sadly dying, but
right,
it
yeah,
was,
yeah. At the point before I knew that I was going, my character was sort of going in a direction that I'd hoped he would go, which was again, you see me more and more. You see Tobin more and more on the front lines,
yeah,
gun in hand, protecting people. You saw him with Judith, with baby Judith, like,
yeah,
carrying baby Judith in the backpack. That should have been an iconic image. Just the idea of like,
yeah.
here's
I
good
like
old Tobin, and there's Judith and there's something cool going on there. But, a lot of times you realize you're on the show, you have to kind of build up a character in order to make their parting or their death
yeah,
more meaningful, and and I think sometimes that's a complaint that some fans have had, is just like, somebody died this week and I'm supposed to care, but I don't really know much about that character, so what,
yeah,
and so from a dramatic standpoint, it's always better to have, uh, if you have to lose a character, it should be meaningful. It should hurt to the audience, and it should feel like a loss rather than just something that's just serving a plot point and wasteful.
no, yeah. I completely. I get more attached to the smaller characters, which is I mean, they're not really smaller, but not the Caro and Daryl ones. But I like Caro, but it's just like it's more sad for me when like when you died or Eric died or Hers really small. Just anyone really small is more like great.
Yeah, yeah, and of course you mentioned Eric, and that was handled so meaningfully and tenderly, and like it was just it was exactly right. I mean,
Yeah,
it had a beautiful um, moment. There was a moment as well when I think he's under a tree and you see him from a distance, and there was just a lot of
yeah,
thought that was put into like how are we saying goodbye to this character, and uh, the opposite was when I think of I'm trying to think Anne Mahoney's character. Uh,
Olivia.
yeah, Olivia. I feel like we should have been able to care more about her. I mainly say that because I love Anne Mahoney, and I
Yeah,
think she's such a phenomenal actress, and she just was sort of unceremoniously, shot in
yeah,
the head, and there wasn't a ton more, discussed. There wasn't a lot of discussion or like, good grief, what happened, and that's a character that was, I think, should have had more life, right? Like at least based on the comic book. So I understand
yeah.
obviously there's differences between the show and the comic, but it was unexpected. I think it was
Definitely,
unexpected
yeah.
for
Like,
Anne.
he died a lot later in the comics. In the comics, I
Yeah,
believe.
right. And I again, it's just interesting to me because I think Anne is such a great actress that
Yeah,
she could have carried any sort of plot line or dialogue that they had thrown her way. So,
yeah.
but decisions are made.
True. You and Eric got like a so much better comic death. Because Eric was just shot in the head, and I think Tobin was just devoured by walkers in the comics. I believe, if I'm correct.
Right. So in the comic, Tobin, it's when the zombie horde invades
Yeah,
Alexandria, the tower, comes down, the walls come down, the horde invades, and I think the last thing we see of Tobin is him kind of basically saying, I'll handle this. You go, tell like I'm gonna. So
yeah,
it was like a nice little arc for a very minor character because initially he had been this like cowardly guy, and then he kind of becomes one of Rick's, at least the kind of the ethos of the group becomes he adopts it, and so the idea
yeah,
of course is that he dies with his boots on, like he sacrifices himself for the benefit of the community, and of course that episode the horde invasion came and went, and and Tobin was still alive.
you expect
So
him to get killed off?
uh, yes, yeah, I was expecting. I didn't expect to last as long as I did on the show.
Yeah,
I mean, I took the job when I got it. When I got the job, I knew right off the bat that I had 3 episodes, I think, and that it was just through 3 episodes toward the end of season 5. And then I knew that my character wasn't dead, and that so I had this cool. I was like, this is great. They're gonna come back for season 6. I'm gonna be there at the top of season 6 for a
yeah,
couple episodes. And I mean, when you're sort of a journeyman actor and you get more than one episode of anything, you're you're thrilled. You think, well, because it's one thing to do a co-star, which
yeah,
is, fairly minor, but you're there, you've got lines, on it, one episode, one and done. It's a paycheck. It's part of the pursuit. It's okay. We all do them.
yeah,
Um, but to it feels like a big graduation when you go from doing co-stars to doing a recur. So like now you're a recurring co-star, maybe somebody who's still a very minor character, but we see them from time to time. Um, and uh, and then of course the next level up is to become a guest star, and then you get in, now we're getting into the weeds of kind of like industry speak, but there are ways of graduating a character and an actor up into bigger and better
yeah,
roles, and I think it's fair to say that Tobin started off as a kind of an interesting recurring co-star type character, and he kind of graduated up a little bit. I won't, try to say where he was, other than to mention, when I would do in the later seasons that I was a part of, I was always billed up front. So I was, you would see my name at the front of the show.
Yeah.
And that says a little bit. I mean, I suppose it says something about me, but I like to think that it says something about Tobin as a character. In other words,
Yeah.
that we see that Tobin is at least in some way important to the world of The Walking Dead, even if a lot of characters, what I mean is, even if a lot of our audience might not give him that due,
Yeah.
right? But at least on set and within the writer's room and within the world that we're thinking about on set, I think when I would like to think that, when Andy's thinking about his role, Rick's leadership of who? Well, at the time, it was his leadership of not just his group, but the people of Alexandria, which were represented by people like me and Anne Mahoney and the others. And so there is a sense of, this is our family. Like, this is a family of people who are trying to do life together and survive, together. And so yeah, that's, life and art can bleed together a bit, especially when you're working for so long on a project.
I like that.
Go
back to your walker. How was being a walker? Because that must be so cool to actually play a walker.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it was really in some senses it was a chance to break the constraints of who Tobin was, right?
Yeah.
Tobin being kind of this, stoic, sort of introspective character, not completely emotive or demonstrative in his actions, and just to play the opposite, which is to play essentially a movie monster. So it was fun. It was fun. It was. We have a lot of fans of the show that often have, come up to you and just say, I'd love to just come be a walker for one day. Like, they, and I realize, I get to live that. I got to live that, we as, we as actors, we get to live that every day. And I got to be a part of that. I got to see the show from that standpoint. I get, you're no longer sitting in the normal sort of makeup trailer when you're a walker. Now you're going over to the effects makeup trailer. So it's a different group of people that do the effects makeup and and the contacts, the whole nine, the whole bit. I mean, you become part of a department. It's like you become part of the effects department. You're not just an actor, but like, you are you're their product. Like, they have to make you, and you have to represent them well. And so, I definitely felt that. And those scenes were fun. I got to bite flesh and tear, blood, and all good old, Halloween style fun, if you will.
How long did it take?
Not long at all, actually. If you're talking about getting made up, Tobin was freshly dead, so there were really no prosthetics required. Just some makeup effects that give you that sort of dead flesh look, and then of course the contacts, which there were several sets. One of them were completely opaque; you just couldn't see through them at all. Maybe just light. There was another set that had a tiny hole in the middle so that you could see, kind of tunnel vision, you could see right in front of you.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is that when you're an up close walker, and you're wearing these contacts, you really can't see. You have to have someone is constantly having to kind of guide you to where you need to be. And believe me, like, trying to hit marks, blocking and do blocking, and you can't see what you're doing. That's quite a challenge. So.
Did you get a deaf dinner? They're a thing.
No, like not in a sort of formal sense. It was a very busy time on the show. A lot of actors kind of coming and going. I like to think that my catering that day, or at least the week that I was gone, was stellar. And I remember the food was always good. They always served good food to the cast because good
Yeah.
food, good morale. It's it's not just the cast that eats that. By the way, it's everyone. The background actors. It's the entire crew. So they're really feeding the company. But I think I'll just say I think the catering went up a few notches for whatever reason, and I'd had good food on set before, but I was thinking there, I was sitting there eating, like it was like prime rib or something, and I was just thinking, well, I don't think I would have gotten better food than this had I gone out to some local restaurant and had drinks. So, I was pretty happy with it, and I had gone out, I had gone out with cast members before, and to local watering holes, I guess you might say, and had drinks and conversation. So I didn't need to sort of solemnize my departure with a dinner.
If you could pick anyone from the show as a zombie apocalypse partner, who would it be?
That's a great question. Yeah, so like in a spin-off show kind of situation.
Oh, even better, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I have maybe two answers, and I'm not gonna pick anybody like top. Top. I'm gonna stay out of the top cast, so I'm not gonna go for like it'd be me and Andy. I would say, and also because these are people that I sort of became friends with, and I think it would be fun to work with them. But the first one would be Kenrick Green, because he and I we found we were in scenes a lot together, and he and I when we were kind of hanging out on set, he was such an easy guy to have a conversation with. Just people people hit it off, and you find that you have common interests, and then we ended up having a lot of scenes together where we're kind of side by side, in the battle. And then so we started talking. We decided they should shoot what's called a bottle episode, but not exactly that, but just an episode about Kenrick, or about what's his character's name? Scott. Yeah, Scott and Tobin having to sort of like run for supplies, right? It would just be like, it would be an episode where Scott and Tobin have to go out and get some urgently needed supplies, and we come under attack, and it's all about just our characters like fighting and surviving, and having conversation, like that kind of thing, like kind of a buddy, adventure type of episode. So I don't know if anybody would watch that, but that would be a ton of fun. But I think I think it would be ironic though if it were like Tobin and Dahlia's character, Dahlia Lago's. Francine, yeah, of course, Tobin and Francine, because she clocks him like in the first episode that they have together. Like it's a pretty convincing shot. Yeah. So I think it would be that would be a fun pairing. And again, she was somebody that we all hung out together, so I know it would be a ton of fun. And so yeah, maybe one or both of those.
They could happen. There's another new spin-off called Tales of the Walking Dead, which apparently is like one-off episodes of either dead characters or just other characters. So it could bring you back.
Sure. I mean, it's like kind of an anthology show, right?
Yeah.
So I've actually said this. Like we should, maybe that's what we need to do, is just revisit kind of Tobin origin story, or maybe even a side story, like it takes place within the timeline of what we know about Tobin, but just maybe reuniting him with other characters in a story that maybe we didn't see, kind of as if it were maybe an unaired episode from one of those seasons. But
that'd be good. My friend had one of those questions that tied into this. Did you come up with a backstory for Tobin?
I imagined that Tobin was. I thought about this. I'm not someone that felt like I needed to nail everything down and sort of have it all figured out. But I felt like it made sense, kind of the general direction of his past. I definitely felt like he was sort of blue collar, middle management, um, family. And we know he had a family, or has or had one at some point, because
Yeah.
it's alluded to, but it's never really visited. So we don't meet Tobin's kids
Yeah.
or his ex-wife, his estranged wife, his missing wife.
Would be
We
cool.
don't know. The show never really visited it or talked about it. But yeah, sort of yeah. I think as much as I think Tobin was kind of a bellwether for the Alexandrian sort of worldview and kind of way of doing life. I think in his day, before the apocalypse, I imagined that he was kind of a go along to get along kind of guy. He was probably very, just trying to fit in to whatever world he was in. He was comfortable, kind of played it safe, was, um, and yeah, and in that sense, it seems unremarkable. Um, but I think that's part of who Tobin was, is that he 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 realized he needed to become something more than himself,
Like that.
and um, and I think that's The Walking Dead. That's Carol's story, right?
Yeah.
If you go take it back to the beginning, I mean, that's sort of uh, if you only watched, let's just say you'd only watched the first season of The Walking Dead, I don't think you would have figured that Carol Peltier would become this major,
Oh,
like kick-ass action hero that she became in the later seasons. You
yeah.
just wouldn't. There was no clue about that. There was no, and she was playing someone that doesn't in film. I guess it's a type of character that doesn't typically rise out of that. It's a bit more of a cliche, a stereotype, if you will. Kind of the the quieter figures, the kind of the victim, right?
Yeah.
It's on Law and Order. She's the guest star of the episode that's really about what crimes her husband committed. She gets interviewed. She had no idea, and and then you move on. But I do think that's why people love Carol,
Yeah.
and I understand why people get passionate about her. And it's because they see in her, in many cases, and I've talked to some of the fans. I mean, they see in her experiences that they have had in their own life, and so they identify a lot, and they like to think, I can overcome my challenges in the same way that Carol overcame hers, and
Yeah.
so she's kind of a hero of a certain kind of um, you know self realization and actualization,
Yeah.
and so
That's good. I've got two more. Um, do you think you could survive an apocalypse? As in, you,
well, I suppose it depends on the kind of apocalypse.
like Walking Dead, not like World War Z, because no.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
yeah.
the Walking Dead apocalypse.
Well, I don't know. I suppose survival depends on not being bit or otherwise infected.
Sure.
It depends on sort of being someone who can is resilient under horrific circumstances.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough. I think we all like to think we could survive something,
Yeah.
but we just had a major freeze here in North Texas a few
Yeah.
weeks ago, and it absolutely staggered people. I mean, it
Yeah.
was unexpected. It came on very suddenly and had an effect that no one would have anticipated. And people did okay, but people died as well, and people were scrambling for fresh water, for heat. So that's another thing that's not really explored on the show, is it? What happens in the wintertime?
True.
You'd
We've
expect all those corpses to freeze out there, wouldn't you?
had one episode, just
Mm-hmm.
after the Pike scene, that was kind of cool to see everything all frozen. But
Yeah, yeah.
My girlfriend wants to get into voice acting. Do you know what's the best way to get into voice acting? Just-
Yeah, sure. There's no one best way. I mean, I think it depends on the kind of voice acting that well, even then, I used to be really cavalier about how I answered this question, and I've tried to be more thoughtful about it because not unlike any kind of acting, there can be a lot of ways in to anything.
yeah,
There's not just one door. I mean, if you wanted to become a lawyer, a barrister, whatever you want to, what would you do? What would you do? If you wanted to become a lawyer, what would you do? Well, you'd go to
well,
law school first of all,
yeah,
wouldn't you? You'd go to college. You'd study law. You'd
yeah,
go to law school. You'd go. There's a specific sort of path
yeah,
that uh, that you would take, and it's not so in the arts. It's not so in the field of acting. Um, it is, and so I think it depends on where you're coming from as a performer. I know voice actors that came out of the realm of radio. I know voice actors that came out of the realm of stand-up comedy.
all right,
I know voice actors that were stage actors like me. Um, I think the one thing though that I think a good voice actor needs to be a good actor.
yeah,
It's acting, and a lot of people that aspire to be voice actors, they think they can skip that step, or they don't realize how important it is and they don't take the time. So I always say, if you've never acted before, if you've never been on stage, or if you have but only in a like very kind of amateur situation, go take an acting class. Take an improv class if you have an improv class available. I love improv. I could go on forever about how great I think it is for people in general, but
yeah,
especially for actors. But take an acting class, and then we can talk about the different paths available to getting in. There are certain books that I recommend that do a really good job. One is
okay,
called The Art of Voice Acting by James Allberger. It's available via Amazon, and it's a good introduction to the idea of having a career in voice acting. And he has very
yeah,
practical advice. He's not the only person that's written books. There are now lots of online workshops. Um, there is a group actually based out of the UK called the Voice. It's called the Voiceover Network, I think is what it's called,
yeah,
and it's a terrific resource for it's starting to spill over into the states as well. But it's just a fantastically run little organization of like-minded people who are aspiring to either be a voice actor or to get better as a voice actor, to network with other voice actors. They have classes and online workshops all the time. And the terrific thing about voice acting is that we can do these workshops really can be done from home,
yeah,
and so it's a great way in. And so look up VO Network. I've done workshops for them, and I know I've had fellow voice actors like Chris Rager and Chris Sabat and Sean Schemmel. They've all done workshops with this group, and
yeah,
I think they have a like they do these like hour-long sort of interviews where you can go and just like kind of hear other professional voice actors, and they do that live, and then they'll schedule sometimes the same guest to come back and do like a 3 hour workshop that you can then sign up for. And so I would just say to your girlfriend to see what resources are out there for training.
yeah,
Training is first and foremost. You have to train enough to know what you're doing, and then to have the confidence to be able to go into a situation where you're getting paid. But nobody's just going to typically hire someone
yeah,
cold call. Hey, I think I'd like to be a voice actor. Okay, come on
yeah.
in. It just doesn't happen that way. So,
That's good. Thank you
yeah.
very much. You have all our questions, but hopefully one of this is completely off topic. But when your tweet about liking tacos, I wish I could give you a taco. To not get sponsored by Taco Bell. That's quite funny, but
Yeah. We have an abundance of taco options here in Texas, and it is probably one of our iconic state foods. If not, it should be. um, we have we have a very ethnically diverse population, and tacos can look like a lot of different things. You know, it can be a traditional sort of Tex-Mex style um, food. It can also be sometimes something that has Korean influences or Vietnamese influences. My current favorite taco to eat is a brisket taco. So it's like a smoked, sort of Texas style smoked brisket beef taco,
It's good.
on a flour tortilla. But yeah, tacos are a versatile food for the people.
Yeah, it was just I like them, but then the only reason my whole I guess brand is because have you seen Avengers Endgame?
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course.
When Scott Lang, Paul Rudd just has that taco in his hand, and
Right.
that was it.
Yeah,
That one
yeah. This is
people, you know what?
profound.
That's it.
The symbolism of the taco. You could do an entire episode just like examining kind of tacos in film or media and what does it represent. It's very, it's sort of, like I said, it's a very, it's not elitist. You can't. There's no elitist taco,
Yeah,
right? It's very, it is very for the. It's food for the people. It's sold in various ways. It's inexpensive to put together. It can be incredibly delicious. It's open to interpretation. It's sold on food carts. It's sold on street corners. It's sold as fast food, and sometimes it is sold as an upscale food. But
yeah,
you can never forget. This is a handheld flatbread with ingredients of your choice, of your particular
yeah.
culture, or of just whatever happens to be in in your refrigerator. So you know, is it my favorite food? I don't know, but it's one of we eat it a lot, so it's definitely a staple. And that's the thing is you can eat tacos all the time and never have the same thing twice.
True, true. Have you got
Yeah.
anything you'd like to promote?
Sure. I would love it if your listeners would follow me. Not that I have anything terribly profound to say, but I'll try to offer content from time to time. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. Not the personal side, but I do have a fan page.
Yeah,
And I'm on Twitter, Mr. Jason Douglas on Twitter. And so anytime I'm doing something, if I'm doing a convention or if I have another movie or a film project coming out or if there's something else that I'm doing, I will generally always post something about that. And if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see some of what I'm cooking, which may at times include tacos.
I'll put in
So
the
I
description about all the social media links so they can
Yeah,
get it.
yeah, yeah. And now I'm using like Linktree. So if you go to IG and you go to like there's a Linktree code, it'll
Yeah.
pop down and there'll be links to everything,
Oh,
pretty much that I'm available for. And look out for a couple of things. I mentioned a movie, Redstone, that I did with Michael Cudlitz. So look out for that. There's another horror movie that's making the festival circuit. It's called Cyst, and it is exactly what it sounds like. It's really gross, and it's based on kind of a classic style of sort of 1960s B movie like horror creature feature,
yeah.
and so it's getting good reviews on the festival circuit, and yeah, that's it. I've got an episodic coming up for Freeform. I'm not sure NDA if I'm allowed to talk about it too much, so I'll just say that's another thing that's coming up. So
Yeah.
hope you'll keep me in your media diet somehow.
Yeah, definitely. As soon as
Thanks, Tyler.
tonight, I haven't really. I'm not a big anime fan, but I'm definitely gonna watch uh Dragon Ball Z because I was one
Sure.
clip is just like I need to watch it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and so you might just go find it. You might just go find that movie, which is Dragon Ball Z Battle of the Gods. That movie was really the kind of the reboot of the franchise. At that point, prior to that, there hadn't been any new material for like 17 years. And
Oh
then
wow.
Akira Toriyama, who was the original creator of the series, he kind of came out of his own hibernation as far as Dragon Ball goes, and he just had this he had this new energy to like recreate the show, and so he kind of he did that with Battle of the Gods, and so that was where my character was really launched into the
Yeah.
show for the first time. And so there were two movies: Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods, and then there was Resurrection F.
Okay, that's good.
And then subsequent to that, at some point during all of that, is when Dragon Ball Super, the new series, started coming out.
Yeah.
Subsequent, or at the same time, roughly as the manga had also already been released. So,
Yeah.
and then we just recently had another movie, as I'm sure you know, Dragon Ball Super Broly, with the Broly character. And now we're just kind of in hiatus again. We're still doing the video games.
That's cool.
It seems like annually there's a new Dragon Ball video game title that's released. So we still do those. Fans are really hoping that they pick up the series again because the manga is still going and they're really enjoying that. So watch that.
Well, yeah.
Enjoy it.
Have you seen? I don't know if you've ever heard of him. There's a YouTuber called KSI, an English YouTuber. He's made, or not he didn't make it, but he paid like, if I remember, it's $500,000. He got a massive neck chain of Beerus.
Wow. Wow. I might have seen something like this. Someone sent me a link to someone who bought some jewelry, like some Beerus jewelry for an incredible amount of money. I was just like, wow. I don't like you spent more on that one piece than I've made in my entire career on Dragon Ball. Like, that's astonishing. So where do I get a piece of that? I don't know.
I bet it's cool when it as as an actor seeing which with the Walking Dead cards, the Dragon Ball Z cards, the figures. That must be just so cool for you and bizarre.
Yeah, it's very cool. I was delighted to be included in the Topps trading cards for Dragon Ball as Tobin, of course, and then and of course Beerus has a pop. King Cold has a pop, which is a character. Still don't have a pop for Krieg from Borderlands, which I think is astonishing.
Yeah.
Never had a pop for Tobin for Walking Dead.
Yeah, I wish more of the characters got one.
Hoping to get a pop. Hoping we see a pop for Satan in Preacher, which I did.
Cool.
I did the character of Satan for Preacher, so that would be cool. But yeah, those are kind of my main characters. I think that would have that kind of appeal.
Yeah.
I mean, I've played like lawyers and district attorneys and things like that, but you don't make pops for those kinds of characters. But those other characters are like sort of big, broad, well-known characters, and so who knows? Maybe.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Well,
thanks, Tyler.
Thank you for coming.
Great talking to you. Thanks for being a fan and for promoting the work. And yeah, maybe we can chat again soon in a year or two when I have more to talk about.
Yeah, it'd be great. It'd be good to have you back and meet at a con if they happen if I'm down to go back to America or any cons here.
I love coming to UK. I've been a couple of times now for different shows, and actually, I want to say I came to two shows in UK. In one in sort of I think what you call the Midlands area, and where was the other one? There was one in Coventry, and then more recently, the last one I went was in Glasgow for MCM, and I always have a fantastic time. And so, yeah, I would love to come back your way.
Definitely, it'd be good to see you again. And we'll my group now. We try and if you're down, we'll go for a drink afterwards. I've bought Jordan a pint. I know Sabrina's down to go for a pint if that's your style.
Yeah, of course. I love it. So let's maybe we can make it happen. Like I said, once we get beyond all the kind of restrictions and the anxieties about traveling, and we can begin to gather again. I would say many pints will be raised.
Definitely, yeah.
Once again. So
thank you very much. Have a good rest of your day. Stay safe.
Thanks, Tyler. All the best to you, brother.
Thank you.
Bye now.